As a dentist, doctor, or small business owner, you're probably feeling the weight of balancing your demanding practice with your personal life, right? It's tough to find the time for family, to focus on your health, or even think about your financial future when you're always grinding away at work. To the Dr. Josh Cochran Show, where I'll focus on empowering professionals like you to build passive income and achieve financial independence through real estate and smart investment strategies. Each episode, you'll discover practical steps and real world stories to help you create long term wealth and gain more time to focus on what really matters: health, family, and freedom. You're ready to break the cycle and start living on your own terms. This show is for you. Welcome to the Dr. Josh Cochran Show, #1 show for dentists, doctors, entrepreneurs that covers wealth, health, family, freedom in the world. We have a great show today. As usual, we have our Bishop of Balance, Dr. Reed Faldet. Reed, welcome. Today's topic, we're going to talk about owning your dental building and how that can add 7 figures to your net worth. But first, let's talk a little bit about the news. You know, the new tax bill is still in the Senate. They're working through things. We have some Republicans who want a lot more cuts before they're going to pass it. And we have a lot of new language coming in, so it'll be exciting to see that. We also had an attack on Iran from Israel. So this is serious business. This will, affect many things in our lives. We tend to focus on here in this show. So I have seen like oil prices start to increase. Any thoughts, Reed, on reflections you have on the new tax bill or the attack by Israel in Iran and kind of how it affects you personally?
I don't have much to say on that. The geopolitical side of things, it's just like it seems like it's ongoing. It's never fun to learn about. And you just like hope that you can get to a point where there's peace and like everyone's safe. Otherwise, that's just sad. I mean, we can get a little sheltered here in the United States. We have our own problems, but you realize that it's a lot of other places have it tougher, and we can be
Yeah.
fortunate that we have the safety that we have here with our family. So on the bill side of things, I'm still just kind of waiting to see what the final thing will flush out. Like I don't spend too much time on it just because anything could be cut at any point. I don't want to get excited or frustrated. Um, I think overall people are a little like upset that the bill is um, not cut heavy as they'd want it to be, right? It seems like we're expanding the budget when like we've been talking about cutting things. So I think that's a very just, broad stroke of the bill. But I do like obviously the tax and job cuts coming back, right? The bonus depreciation, those things will directly help us, small business owners, real estate investors. So I'm excited about a lot of those things. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, the QBI, the qualified business income, that's in there, the SALT. I mean, there's a lot of things that'll affect dentists in that bill right now. So probably about 6 or 7 direct effects. So it'll be interesting to see. But I agree. I mean, during COVID, I tried to like interpret what was going to happen with the government and use this a massive time suck,
Yeah.
right? So I try to just know enough to kind of get a good feel what's probably coming down the pipe so I can, on our current developments and our current projects, I can plan better. But yeah,
Mhm.
you're right. It's not worth diving in too much. So,
Mhm.
so this is one of the most common questions, I hear and probably you hear in dentistry. Is it worth buying my building? What are the benefits of buying my building? How do I buy my building? How do I set up the leases? I mean, there's a good probably 20 questions that has come up from this, and so this is a great question to dive into today. Where do you want to start, Reed?
Where should we start? So I guess the first place to start is why? Like if you have the opportunity, why should you possibly pursue it? I think that's a good starting point because there's work to be done, there's strategies, there's a lot of due diligence, there's ways to underwrite it. Like you can go deep into it and you should, but like starting with why. Like why should you have interest in purchasing your real estate in the first place? think that's a good place to start. Do you have anything to say on that? Otherwise, I can share mine.
I'll fill in the gaps, brother. Yeah, go.
Oh, you want me to lead? Okay. And Brandon here that's on, I don't know, he's gonna pipe in a little bit, but he's in the process of acquiring a portion of his building or more of his building. Um, and he could speak to the very attractive financing that he's getting on it to make to make it like a great, phenomenal investment. Um, Brandon, do you want to pipe in on like you're essentially acquiring another portion of your building with 0% down, and your mortgage is going to be essentially what your rent was. So, I mean, the math definitely maths for you.
No doubt, it makes sense. Banks, if you're a dentist and you're making decent money, like banks will just throw money at you. And so my deal was a little bit different just because we had like a 6,700 square foot building with the first unit being about 45% of that. That one went vacant like right before I was about to close. And so I decided not to buy that one just because cash flow reasons and just because you don't want to buy a vacant building. I figured I'd let it sit and then maybe make an offer later on. But anyway, I bought 55% of mine. So that's about 30, I think it's like 3,700 square feet. And yeah, they did 0% down. I got a 10-year term on a 20-year AM schedule. I think rates at the time I got it like 4.99. Which talking to other lenders, like they were in the sixes and stuff. So I really shopped a lot of lenders and beat them down. But yeah, the rates were really favorable and the terms were favorable. So I was like, it makes sense to buy it. And then of course I'm going to do a cost seg and try and take advantage of some bonus depreciation. But yeah, definitely a good tax play. And more importantly, you know, once the asset's paid off, yeah, it's passive income. Whether you decide to sell a DSO or hold on to the building, it just made sense. I just knew I had to get into ownership position with the building.
Yeah, yeah, that's a phenomenal deal. So I think how I think about it is no matter what, if you own a dental practice, you're going to have facility costs, right? Usually most people in the form of a rent payment, right? You have a lease. And so if you're going to have facility costs and a lease, and especially a triple net lease where you're paying taxes, insurance, property maintenance anyway, you might as well own the space, control it, and have those facility costs going towards building equity in an asset that's going to grow over time. I mean, that's like a very simple way of how I think about it. Because essentially, even if it doesn't cash flow, even if you're just paying in mortgage payments what you would pay in rent, you're building equity, and that equity over time plus the appreciation, I think it's like 20% annualized returns. Like I've done the math several times. So like that's a win right there. Now, Brandon already mentioned the tax advantages. So, do you have something to say, Brandon?
Back to what you were talking about in terms of like the value of the building. So that's a lot. Those are a lot of numbers that I crunched for years because this has been like a 3-year process of me trying to chop them down. At first, they were asking like 3 million for the building, and then when I plugged the numbers into the calculator in terms of interest rate, amortization schedule, etc., like the money I was gonna be paying for the building was a lot more than what I was paying in rent in the beginning. And so I had
Mhm.
a hard time in the beginning figuring out like at what point is this not a good deal anymore? Like if they were asking for a number too high, like I was wondering like does it make more sense to rent for right now? And so that's something that's still hard to calculate for me just because there's so many variables that go into it. Appreciation of the building, principal pay down, you know. Um, Obviously like what your bank note is going to be. It's not like I was paying cash for it. And so at first they were valuing this thing like a 5.2% cap rate. I think I ended up getting it for like a 6, but I beat them down from 3 million to 2.7. But that was something where crunching those numbers can be complicated and confusing.
Josh, do you have like a nice straight like forward way of thinking about that? Like so how I try to think about it is like for sure if your rent payment is gonna is your excuse me, if your mortgage payment is gonna be equivalent to what you're paying in rent, then it's gonna make sense there. But at what point, if you're starting to pay more in mortgage than you would in rent, does that return not make sense anymore? And have you thought about this, Josh, and you know where that level is?
Yeah, I got spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. So what I do is um I have a spreadsheet I built out, right, where I put in all the numbers. I have my due diligence items up top. So I have like 20 due diligence items up top. Like what are the traffic counts? How old is the building? Zoning, like go through my 20 due diligence checklist points, right? Because you can get screwed on certain stuff. You can be commercial and then realize you're in a residential zone, right? And like you only one call to the county and you're screwed, right? Like you got to go through your checklist items to make sure you're not missing anything and not going to get screwed, right? And then once you go through that, yes, I have like I think the last one I did had like 8 different scenarios, like seller financing, bank financing, and just it breaks down like all the different parts, like Brandon mentioned: income, depreciation, equity pay down, appreciation, tax benefits year one, tax benefits year two, right? And so I'll calculate like a cash on cash return year one, year two. I'll add in tax, calculate that. And so really just very thorough, very comprehensive, because like Brandon said, if you do not put it in a spreadsheet and have it all broken down, you're just going to go circular with your thinking. It's very hard to tell if you're making a good decision or not. So really, the simple answer, it's just math.
Mhm.
So do the math, or I guess if enough people want it, Reed and I could take my spreadsheet and simplify it maybe a little bit so it's nice and clean for folks so they can make a decision on their own
I
building.
think I think like a level one sniff test would be good, right? Of like, here's a quick filter that for sure, maybe the numbers don't work. I don't know if there's like rules of thumb are helpful to get you closer, but then obviously you always have to go through all the steps that you said. Like
Yeah.
ultimately you're going to get there anyway, but
It's nice. There's only, I think, like, I have to remember, like 5 numbers you have to plug in, right? So it's a lot of outputs, but there's only really 5 numbers you have to plug in. So if you request those numbers, you get those numbers.
Mhm.
That's a good, quick way to make a yes, no, or like Brandon said, renegotiate the price. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I get dentists who will message me all the time because I've been on the Facebook groups for years asking the same question, like, yo, what's sense? At what point does this not make sense? And so like the main variables I plugged into my equation were like bank terms. Like, am I doing a 20-year amortization schedule or 25? And then I plugged in interest rates too. And like that was my initial one where I just plugged it into the calculator and compared that to what my current rent payment is. And then you got to factor in the stuff like you talked about, the tax benefits, the appreciation of the building, and then your principal pay down. And so like I kind of plug those numbers in, like those are my variables. I think I don't know, Josh, is there any other ones that I'm not including of like the main five that you were saying like
yeah,
these are the intro ones that you should be looking at?
I'm pulling up my last one here. Just trying to remember the address. Let me pull up one here and I'll see.
There's a variable too of expanding your business. Like I'm going from 7 to 13 chairs. And so like it made sense to me to pay a premium for this thing because I'm gonna get a much higher return out of my office than any real estate deal. But for folks who let's say they're confined to a certain space, like these are important numbers to plug in because if you're not gonna expand, like it really has to be looked at as an investor. Like if a private investor came in to do this deal, would they do it?
Wealth is built through business first, right? Real estate is an addendum to that if you're not 100% real estate, right? So your dental business is always number one, Brandon. And so that usually takes precedent over the returns that we're talking about. The
Mhm.
returns on your business take precedent over the returns in real estate. Basically, you can overpay for the real estate for the control and ability to grow your dental business.
Exactly.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I'll just list off a few of these. So, I always get like the parcel number, go on the county, look at everything I can get from the county. I get like a land, so I know how much land there is. Parking is key. That's one thing that's the number one thing I think people get screwed on is they don't have enough parking. They don't realize it. So we really look at parking. Usually you want like for dental. Gosh, the more the merrier, but usually about 6 spots per 1,000 feet of building. Okay.
Mhm.
Five is kind of the minimum, but really you want to be at six. So if you're starting to get like the three, four, especially with all the dental team members, you better have like an accessory parking lot nearby or a street that you can park on. Um, so
Yeah,
parking.
parking is like I even with when we built our practices, it's just like you forget you have seven, eight whatever you have for team members, right? And then you have nine chairs or whatever you have. Like you fill up a parking spot. Like we have a higher ratio or higher need of parking than a lot. And then if
Yep.
you're ortho or pedo, right? And you have a specialty with a high volume, like if you're a pediatric dentist that sees 50 kids a day, like depending on how that looks, like you're gonna need even more possibly. So
And then you got to look at your co-tenant mix. Brandon, is the building empty besides you now, or is there any other tenants in there?
There's a tenant right next to me still, so I'm having to pay her some money to terminate her lease 2 years early.
Okay,
And so, but we've already made that deal, so she should be out within the next 2 months.
so she's out. What kind of business does she run?
Massage.
Massage, okay. So, massage, like a big massage business is actually high traffic volume as well, right? We have like I forget, it's like a massage envy or something near my house, and we have a dental practice in that same place, and they have a lot of vehicles, right? There's a masseuse for every room, there's a patient for other room, there's patients waiting in the waiting area, there's the admin staff. So you really got to consider the tenant mix as well. High volume tenants are great co-tenants because they bring volume, like visual volume to your practice, right? They're like, oh, there's this dental office next door. But on the flip side, if you're having parking issues, the best like co-tenant is like an insurance agent, right? That has like one or two cars in the parking lot all day. Uh, it just depends on.
No doubt, parking's a major thing. At my church, they expanded, but they forgot to factor in the parking situation. It's been like a huge headache. They finally got it resolved. It was like a year-long stressor. They just didn't factor that in. It's something that I wouldn't have thought about, but
Um,
it's big.
It's a lot. I don't want to bore people, but I'll just lift these off just to give people some things to think about. So you need to think about zoning. Are you appropriately zoned? Are you appropriately zoned for expansion if you want to? Is there a left turn? Sure, people can right turn. Is there a left turn into your space? Retail spaces that have a left turn are much higher valued or on a stoplight. Is there a pylon sign? How visible is the pylon sign? How old is the pylon sign? Right? Those are all things to consider. How long has the building been on market? Like Brandon said, he's been negotiating for 3 years, right? And so these guys he's been wearing them down. The longer a building is on market, that the bigger the smile that comes on my face because I know I can
Yeah.
negotiate. Uh, I'll toss out a few more here. You got to look at market rents, right? Sure the building's getting $35 a square foot, but market's 24. So when that tenant's lease is up, right, they're gonna come at you for a lower rent or just move. I look at when it was it last sold, what was the last sale price? I really try to understand the seller's motivations, where they're at, right? If they've owned it for 30 years, you can probably negotiate them down. If they've owned it for 2 years, right? They don't have a lot of wiggle room, right? The price is the price. Either they have a bank loan or they have a bunch of money into it and they don't want to lose it, right? Um, Current taxes, projected taxes, right? If the city's way behind on taxation on this building and you're paying three times the tax appraisal on it, your taxes after you buy it are going to go up at least 2.5 times. Sometimes cities give you a little break; they won't charge you full sale, but yeah, you got to look at taxes. It may go up quite a bit. Um, what value has been added since last sale? Um, and interrupt
which
me, guys if
which
you
that
want one of these. Yeah.
So which is a key point. So like when Brandon is figuring out like, hey, I need our dental practice is busting at the seams and we're having operational constraints based on the physical building. Like if you have seven chairs, you need to go to 13, you need more space. Well, you've already invested $700,000 in your space or whatever, right? That you can't take with you if you don't buy that building. So you can almost think of it as like that's dollars going towards that building or a price reduction in that building in your mind or that much more you'd be willing to pay for the building, so you can kind of make that a factor as well. Because like Brandon, if you're going to start over and build a 13 out practice somewhere else, you're going to put what, a million two into the space or something like that.
Be huge, and I actually did all that stuff. So I kind of strategically positioned myself to negotiate because they didn't want to sell it. And so I got the land across the street under contract, but just the acre and a half was like 1.2 million. And then when you're paying that much for the dirt in Austin, Texas, you're like, you got to build big. So I'm looking at 10,000 square foot build that I won't occupy. And so I'm like, I'm penciling these numbers on the project. It's going to be like a $4.5–5 million project, uh, just to move. And I was like, man, this seems a little scary for me right now in my career. I'm 33 years old. So I was like, okay, let's really, I still position myself strategically, but I really did not want to do that move. So, but it worked. It worked because my lease was set to be up at the end of this year. But yeah, development deals those are for Josh right now. Maybe I'm gonna get into them eventually, but I'm not where Josh is at yet. We'll leave that to Josh for right now.
I think you made the right choice, BJ. Like with the cost of construction right now, like if you've got a good thing going, right, it rarely doesn't make sense to go ground up. Um,
Exactly.
if you're six ops running 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., right? And you're like, we could double the size of this practice and add pedo and add ortho and add endo if I could build a bigger space and rent it out to four other tenants. And I already know two of them who want to come in, right? Then it makes sense. But most of the time, just my thoughts when I've been looking at numbers, and it sounds like Brandon had the same thought. Like, Reed, are you seeing that? Like 80% of the time, it's
Too
probably not a
expensive.
good idea.
Correct. The
Yeah.
majority of the time.
And this is
Yeah.
different from 10 years ago, right? So if in your brain you're like, no, all these guys did it. Like, why did they do it? Like 10 years
It made
ago, the
sense.
math made sense. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, much more often than it does now.
Yeah, it seems like the only time it works is you're in a low cost land area and a low construction cost area, which and then you're also in a high rent area. Like those three things don't typically match up. Uh they're usually like inversely related. So Austin, high land, high cost, high rent. I mean, but that's
Yeah.
why it worked out well for Brandon. But go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
No, this is just tossing stuff out, and then you want an inspection. Like is there deferred capital expenses, right? Like have they been keeping the building up to date? In a retail building, like the roof is usually number one risk, and then number two is like the HVACs,
HVAC.
right? Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes the HVACs are on the landlord, right? So you got to get all that stuff inspected, or you might have like a $50,000 bill in your first year buying that building. Brandon, did you have the roof and the HVACs all inspected and stuff?
I didn't just because they built it, I think 8 years ago.
Good.
And I've been in there for the last 5, and so I knew everything's in pretty good shape.
Yep.
It's a triple net lease though, so of course, like right after I closed the HVAC on top of my roof, one of them went out. That was 5,000, but I would have had to pay for that regardless as a tenant. And so I figured, like, yeah, if the roof is in bad, I had already chopped these guys down from them being in a position of not even wanting to sell, to the point where I was like, hey, if we're gonna get it for the number I want, like, I'm not gonna nickel and dime you. If a new roof is gonna cost me 20,000, next year, so be it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think too, I think your story is a good one because a lot of times it comes down to timing in life, right? So it's not just about price, right? You got to think about the landlords and what do they want? If they have another deal that's super lucrative and they just need cash to do it, then they're willing to negotiate, right? And so a lot of times, timing is a big.
It's huge. It's huge. Not to hijack the thing to make it all about my project, but it's just a crazy story because, like I told you, I've been chopping at them for 3 years, nothing. They wanted to hold on to it, and then so they had sold their urology group to a private equity company, and so they didn't own it anymore. And so their lease was set to be renewed in January 1st of this year. The private equity group came back to them and said, "Hey, we're not renewing the lease. We're going to move locations." And so they'd been radio silent. We hadn't talked in like months. And I tell the story. Some people don't believe me, but I don't care. It's true. I was just praying one day. I was like, God, like if this deal is supposed to happen, like make it clear to me, because I've been talking to them for 3 years and like they're not even budging. The next day, the head guy at their urology clinic texted me and said, "Hey, equity group's not renewing our lease. Like, let's talk." And I was like, "Wow, it's nuts." And so they came down like 300,000 on their price, and we did the deal. But yeah, timing is everything. Because 3 years, like, for the past 3 years, they thought they were going to be there forever. Suddenly, the private equity group comes in and like, "Hey, you guys got to move," and then they're like, "Oh shoot." Now they know I have the land under contract. I might be gone. The massage tenant, is losing 5,000-10,000 bucks a month. Like they were on the verge of having a completely vacant 6,800 square foot building. And so they're like, all right, let's negotiate. And so it just worked out. But timing is everything for sure.
That's an awesome story, man. That's great.
Yeah.
And it matched your growth trajectory perfectly, right? Like when your wife
Yeah.
working with you, because your wife came into the practice, you guys just like grew fast after that.
Yeah. We
And
doubled once my wife joined. And so now we're at the point where we're definitely at capacity. Like I don't think I can push it any harder than we are. Like I think we're tracking to do like 4 million this year out of 7 chairs. We did 3.5 last year. But like I can't really work much harder. And this is family dentistry, guys. So you guys are dentists, like I'm not doing big all on fours and full mouth makeovers and having, 20K mornings. It's like I'm doing a root canal and a crown and a filling next to it. But to do that much dentistry of just quadrant, like regular dentistry, it's like it's exhausting. So like, dude, we need some more help in here.
the volume. We talked about that last week a little bit, but yeah, the volume-based model, you have to do it, but it's exhausting.
Reed was running out of 4 chairs. Yeah, that gets you tired. Just on the doctor's side, right, Reed? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just on the doctor side.
That's crazy.
Just numb them up, and I'm working them through.
Do you have EFTAs, Reed?
I do now. We train.
Nice.
We taking our current assistants. In Iowa, it's like you go level 1, which is like your basic stuff. Level 2 is like you can start placing fillings. And so we recently just got 2 level 2s trained up, and so we're testing that out a little bit.
That's a game changer.
Oh,
yeah.
So nice.
Fillings suck so bad. Everyone, I don't. Yeah.
But that's got to be tough with that's a side topic for another day. But I'm just thinking of the post-ops I have with like sensitivity, and my wife has. I'm like, dang man, I wonder what it'd be like with an assistant doing this.
Just gluma everything, right? Glue around. Shoot it with the fire hydrant. Let's Brandon, this is great with your story. Let's touch on a few other due diligence points that are in there. Is like releasing, right? Did you check what like local occupancy rates are in your area?
Yeah, I mean, I kept an eye on the market and just to see like what was available, but I didn't necessarily like probably do numbers to the diligence level you would have. But I certainly weighed my options.
Okay, so like, usually you can reach out to local brokers or just look online. You can find like local occupancy rates, right? So, good occupancy rates are like 90% and above in an area. You're probably gonna be able to find tenants. Below 80 is not good. So, but it's also very like neighborhood specific, right? So you really, at the end of the day, have to use the numbers plus your filter. And then also like job growth, population growth, right? I mean, those are two key metrics to look at. Traffic. What kind of traffic you got there, Brandon?
It's high. So, I mean, this area, we're like in a suburb, like right on the outskirts of Austin. It's an Austin zip code, but we're right on the verge of Round Rock. And so it's
Okay.
like one of the fastest growing areas in the country right now. And so, like, I wasn't
Perfect.
worried about it from that standpoint. But it's odd though, because that middle unit that the massage tenant is in now, that had been vacant for 2 years. That had been vacant for 2 years. And so, like, I know this group was just scared of like the vacancy. They just weren't able to find a tenant for it. And it's odd because it's a high growing area, but yeah, even on my street, there's a lot of for lease signs. It's just, after COVID, the work from home thing, people are just like, why am I going to spend all this money paying rent when I can just do it from the house?
So everything you're going through and saying is normal and natural. So, start with why, like Reed said. So we should break that down actually a little bit more. But once you have like a Y in place, then you got to, run the numbers initially, which maybe we can do just a little. And then you got to go through the due diligence and, also look at like medium income in the area, safety. So we went kind of over the due diligence pieces here. Reed, do you want to kind of go back to the why here, make sure we're real clear on the why, and then we can get to the kind of the how a little more.
Sure. Sure. I mean, so I was just thinking about Brandon, your numbers you bought for 2.7, right?
So I was using those numbers just to show you like what the original deal was, but I had them condo units 2 and 3 for me. And so it would have been a 2.7 valuation if I bought the whole building, but I bought mine for those 2 units for 1.5. 1.5
1.5.
is what I paid
Yeah. See
because I
here
didn't
real
buy
quick.
that first unit.
Okay. So like you paid 1.5 for it. You have a 20-year note on it, 10-year fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and you said that your mortgage is going to be equivalent to your rent. So from that perspective, like we don't need to say that we got to figure out that you're net negative on rent over time or mortgage because you're paying more on mortgage than you want to rent. But that aside, operational control aside, like just looking at the numbers, so like you're buying your space for 1.5 million. You have $0 down, right? So there's no like it's hard to calculate ROI when you have no money in the deal.
Infinite cash on cash return.
Infinite,
I put zero
yes.
dollars in. Yeah.
But then at the end of 20 years, you're gonna have a property like your condo, you guys, for probably worth 2.7 million, at 3% annual growth. And in Austin, maybe more, but we'll just throw 3% out there. So you could have a paid for property worth 2.7 million. So that's 1.2 million of equity growth over that time, right? So
Yeah.
like that's where this show comes from is like it adds 7 figures to your net worth just on that equity side, not to mention everything else too. So you and I were talking about, Brandon, the tax benefits. So all dentists are like, hey, I want to be a real estate professional. Like that's the best way to offset my taxable income. But the one thing is, the one time you can offset your taxable income with real estate is when your practice occupies the real estate. That's the magic there because then you get to do right, Josh?
You have to tell your accountant to do a grouping election between the two.
Yep.
They have to check the box. Yep.
So it's considered one activity and not separate. So like essentially you get to take all those passive losses from that real estate, i.e. bonus depreciation from a cost seg study, and you get to use it to offset your active income as a dentist. It's like the one time you can really do that without real estate
Yeah.
professional. So you and I were talking about that, right? So you have zero money in the deal, and then also you're probably going to wipe out $100,000 of taxes, right, or something like that. So like your ROI on just the tax alone is big, and then your ROI on the equity growth in the property is big, and so there's just like a lot of wins, and then you get the operational control as well. So it's kind of like win, 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 in my
No
mind.
doubt.
Yeah,
When it comes to the grouping election, this is one thing that I'm still not clear on. So, is there any benefit to raising your rent that your practice pays to your real estate entity if you're doing a grouping election?
So the grouping election is based off of your sale price, the
Oh,
depreciation. Um, yeah. What I tell
that
people,
one's confusing. Yeah.
yeah, it's based off of your sale price. So let me walk you through this. I'll just go step by step here. So I just have to use models or else I talk in circles. So, so I'm just going to use the ideal model. Okay. Real estate is ideal. Okay. The first one is I for income. Okay. So technically your income here is zero, right? Because you're paying about the same that you were paying in rent. Okay. So that's not part of a return. The depreciation piece on retail, if you get a cost segregation and 100% bonus depreciation comes back this year, 100% bonus depreciation is typically supported by both Democratic and Republican parties historically. So there's no guarantees, but that is highly likely to come back this year, and it would be retroactive through January. Did you buy this year, Brandon? Did you sign on this year?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's assume 100% depreciation to keep the math simple. Typically on retail buildings, you're looking at usually around 25 to 35% in the first year of the value gets depreciated. Okay.
Mhm.
Because it's dental and you have all those furnishings on the inside, I don't know how your accountant has depreciated your fixtures, whether the building got those or you got those. So there's some questions on yours you're going to need to sort out with the cost seg folks. Okay. Like a cabinetry that's attached to the wall. Did you write that off or did the landlord write that off, right? Who? And so now that you are the owner, if you hadn't written it off in the past, you may be able to write it off now. Make sense?
Hmm.
So 25 to 35 is a good rule of thumb. Okay. So let's just say a third of that 1.5 million. That's 500 grand off your income in year one this year.
Big.
You
That's
take that
big.
off. And if you're paying 37% tax on that high level piece, right? What's
Hmm.
37 times 500, right? So that'll give you a good idea of your, um, yeah, I don't know,
Tax savings,
70,
multiple
something
six
like that.
figures. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, almost 200 grand. So that's that benefit. Um, I tend to get granular, but I want to give you like really like where does the seven figures come in? The next one is equity pay down. On your loan at the beginning, you're not going to be paying a lot of principal. Okay, it's probably going to be like three quarters in interest. Okay, but that is principal that you were not paying down before, right? So do
Hmm.
you know what your monthly payment's going to be, Brandon?
Yeah, it's 7,000. 7,000 right now.
Okay, so I'm just gonna roughly say, 1,500, 1,800 of that a month. So 18,000, let's just say 20,000. Okay, so in year one, you're gonna get an extra 20,000 in principal pay down on your loan. Now that is a curve, right? As you get closer to paying off that loan towards the 20 years, that really curves up. So you pay more and more principal down.
Hmm.
Not a huge impact first year, but later on, you'll really start making chunks. Appreciation, every neighborhood's different. Okay. Now, Texas is super popular, right? People love the politics, people love the low taxes. Historically, I like to assume, you're 2.5 to 3% appreciation historically. Okay. Maybe if it's Texas, you can maybe assume 3 to 4% appreciation every year. Okay. The issue here for you, Brandon, though, is condos are very difficult to sell and do not sell at good multiples. Okay.
Mm.
I don't think you made a bad purchase here because you're already in it. You needed to expand. It's a good business decision. Now you have control and it allows you to expand. Okay. So I don't think you made a bad decision here. But $405 a square foot that you paid is on the high end. Okay.
Hmm. I know.
You paid a high number there, but again, because you're in it, it doesn't bother me. But exiting on this, okay, unless you're selling it to another dentist, is going to be very challenging. Okay, because you own the condo, you don't own the whole building. So I would continue to work on, I would find a really good realtor in the area for retail. Okay.
Hmm.
And find the best ones. Like start talking to people. Who's tops? Look online. Who's tops is really who does the most volume year over year on average. Okay. Figure out who they are. And I'd actually talk to like two or three of them. So, because when you talk to two or three, you hear different things. And then what you hear from this guy, you can ask those questions to the next guy, right? And through doing that in a circle between those three, you actually figure out who's the top guy, right? Who answers these questions, who's bullshitting you, who's real. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is this okay when you go this action oriented for you? Is this
Yeah.
helpful?
Yeah. This is great.
Okay.
This is great.
So you talk to the three realtors, you get a real sense of what are actual occupancy rates in this area for this type of product. Okay. What are rents, cams, like what can you actually, how quickly can you fill up this building? What rents are you going to get on it? Okay. So these endo guys, and if it's partners, right, especially one of those partners probably wants out. Okay. They don't want to lose money, but like at least one of those partners in that urology group want out. Okay. So they want to sell. So you got to figure out on your end by talking to these realtors, how quickly can you fill up that building? When you fill up a building, tenants are going to want TI money. Okay. So you need to get clear on that. It's going to cost you out of pocket. And you're going to have to pay broker fees. Okay. You can negotiate broker fees. Try not to pay him for 10 years, even if it's a 10-year lease. Try to pay him just for the first 5. Try to negotiate that down. But get clear on those numbers for yourself, okay? But once you do that, once you understand clearly how long this is likely to take to fill up, and usually you want to assume you're renting it out in like 1,600 to 2,000 square foot bays. Okay. You mentioned, I think, after your 3,700 square foot, is there 2,000 square feet left? How much left of this building is there?
They're 3,400 square feet. And so these are the exact things that I was talking to the broker about because, of course, after we did the whole condoization process, they came back and said, hey, we want to sell the first unit to you too. And I was like, you should have just taken the original offer I made at 2.7. But anyway, I was trying to crunch these numbers with the broker to see with, tenant improvement dollars, et cetera, rental rates, like at what price point does this make sense for me?
Perfect.
And so
So
that deal's still on the table. I just don't think I can get it for what it makes sense for. And I don't even know what it really makes sense for. I'm not clear on that number.
you're not in a rush, right? I'm not saying you should be a rush on this, okay? They're going to have a really hard time selling that space on the open market. They can't. They can only sell that space to another tenant, okay?
For sure.
So you've got the advantage here to be patient. All I'm saying is someday buy that other piece. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for you to sell your piece in the future.
Okay, that's good advice.
Good. Okay. But you have the upper hand here. You're in no rush. They have no tenant, right?
Yeah. They're
So,
trying to sell it, but they have to sell it to owner occupied buyer.
yeah, yeah. So you've got the upper hand here. So continue to do that. So appreciation, let's just assume 2.5% to be conservative, 4% Texas, somewhere in that range. Okay. And then the interest expense, right? There's a write-off with that too. The interest expense you're paying on that loan, right? You got to write some of that or all that off as well. Can't remember the exact cutoff. So, um, when we're looking at numbers here, sorry, Brent, I'm a finance guy, right? I just dived into the numbers. Like Reed's absolutely right. Like, how do you add 7 figures here? Like over 20 years, instead, the simplest math is instead of paying rent, now you own the building after you own the condo after 20 years, right? So you just added 1.5 to your net worth, plus um, the depreciation benefit, right? That's probably going to be end up being, oh, let's say 350 to 400 grand over a few years in taxes you don't pay. Okay, that's an upfront return. Time value of money, right? You don't pay those taxes now and you get to reinvest it. The equity pay down, that was the one we mentioned. Then appreciation. Yeah, I mean over 10, 20 years, you take 1.3%. The simple math is you take 1.03 to the 20th power, right? And you know how much your building's worth. And then the interest
Two,
expense.
two
So
point
like,
two point
yeah,
seven.
what's up?
2.7. It should be worth 2.7 based off of 3% appreciation.
Right after 20 years, right? Like
Mhm.
almost doubled. So I think on the yeah, so we talked about why, we talked about due diligence, we talked about um how every situation, how to do it. Every situation is very different, as Reed and I know. But now we've talked about how the math works, right? How you can easily not just make seven figures
Well,
here, right? He's actually, I mean, it's
probably
like
over 2.
2.7 plus all the other. I mean, he's over 3 million.
Hmm.
That doesn't even incorporate his business gains from growing his business.
Hmm.
You
And what did you saved two if you saved $200,000 in taxes, what is that $200,000 going to be doing for the next 20 years, right?
Add that.
Yeah, yeah, that.
uh,
And Josh, I was telling Brandon about this. If that other space, that condo, if they're going to go in there and rip stuff out and build out the practice like they are, they can do a partial asset disposition where they can expense more in 1 year than what bonus depreciation will allow. We've done that before. Have you done that before?
Uh, I think I have, but I don't use the same language that you have. When we do build out, we depreciate like everything in there, like the equipment and all that kind of stuff. We do like 100%, and then anything that is like 15-year or less for the building. We do it 100%. And anything over 15-year, then it's on like a different
So,
schedule.
so I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
So you do a cost segregation study on the whole building,
On
and
that.
Brandon's going to move into this extra 2,000 square feet or whatever. There is internal structures, there's electrical, there's plumbing, there's all these things within that that you're going to gut out and you're going to put your practice in, and that all has value from that cost seg study, whether it's 100
Yes.
grand, 150, and because you're eliminating it, you get to expense it in year one, so you get to layer that on top of the original bonus depreciation. So your $500,000 of bonus depreciation might turn to a 650 in that year, or 600, depending on whatever the internal structures are.
I call that a staged cost seg. And yes, I have done that. And you can even do that with tenants too. It doesn't have to be yours. It can be your building, but after the tenants put in their TIs, you can actually depreciate some of their TIs too. So yes, that's a great point, Reed. Brandon, so I think the point here too for you to take home is exactly what Reed said, right? When you get a cost seg, do a stage cost seg, tell them, hey, we have all this stuff already that we'd like to cost seg and group bonus depreciate. And then next year we're going to finish this part. So let's make our cost seg a staged one. So they don't charge you twice. Maybe they charge you an extra 50%, but they don't charge you 200% on your cost seg. And then three, if you do end up buying this building, know that you can accelerate the depreciation of whatever tenant you get in there, some of those TIs too. Um,
Right.
Not a tax professional, but just just kind of what Reed and I have seen. That's a great point, Reed.
Yeah, all around though, I mean, a good deal, a good financial move, a really good financial move.
And I think this is a good example, Brandon. Thank you for being vulnerable and transparent, is because it didn't cash flow, right? You weren't actually paying less, right? You were paying even. So this is a fantastic example to show like that rule of thumb that Reed mentioned. If you're not paying any more buying it than you're already paying, then with all these other benefits, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Um, Even if you're paying, top of market price, um,
Yeah.
fair top of market price, not over market.
And Brandon, if you invest that $200,000 of tax savings for the next 20 years at 10%, that's another 1.3 million. So on top of there, I think you can get 10% returns. Not
Let's
bad.
go. Sounds like I didn't blow it. It's crazy though, going through these deals like yourself, like me and Reed met online because we were looking for a CPA who actually like knew what they were doing. It's like I feel like just going through this stuff, like I feel like I have more knowledge than a lot of CPAs out there. Now, do I know how to like file the taxes and put all the forms in? No, but like just from a conceptual standpoint, like no one's gonna care more about your money than you, right? And so when you go through stuff like this, you really do learn a lot. You can talk that language.
The CPAs, yeah, I just haven't seen it either, Brandon. I agree. Even the CPAs I like, I just don't feel like they're incentivized to really get into this stuff. The more they get into this stuff, the more time it takes from them, and the more risk, right? I mean, CPAs don't want to spend their time doing IRS audits all the times, right? So they're not really incentivized to focus on these things. So I've been using ChatGPT for pretty much all my accounting and legal, or Gemini or just AI, and then really feeding the accountants, the attorneys, kind of confirming. I guess maybe would be a good word. The structures I've already built out. Otherwise, um, they just don't get paid. They get paid in a certain way, right? And to streamline solutions for you is not a way an accountant gets paid. And the streamline piece is definitely not a way an attorney gets paid,
For
right?
sure. It's so funny you said that because I'm doing the exact same thing. Just side tangent, just like I was doing the math on 401ks. And I'm like, they have the CPA has us paying ourselves a ton of W-2 income. And I'm like, by the time I paid, I just plugged in all the numbers of Chat GPT and it spat out the answer and I copied it to the guy. I just confirmed what I already knew. I just didn't want to do the math myself. I sent it to the
Yeah.
CPA and he was like, yeah, good point. I'm like, dude, is it your job to like know how to maximize all this stuff? Like, why am I giving you like a revelation here? I'm like, oh yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
Uh,
Like it only makes sense because no one in my office is matching it right now. But once they start doing that, man, it doesn't. The 401k is a topic for another day, but I'm pissed about that.
Same with profit sharing, dude. Like the math on that, when
Oh my
you're
gosh,
old
don't
and
even get me
everybody's young.
going.
And then it's not even just the math, it's they got their hooks in you, right? You're so locked in and constrained at that point. Um, I try not to even discuss this with people because it doesn't create any, it's just a waste of time for me personally. But yeah, like I made a few posts, I don't remember back in the day in like dental investment group about 401ks and profit sharing and how I just wouldn't do them because of the math and the lack of control and you're just committed. And it's
And
just
everyone on there probably ate you alive, thinking it's the
I was
greatest
gonna
gift
say
they've
this.
ever gotten.
I was gonna say the same
I could
thing.
spend
Terrible.
3 years explaining it there's always new people who need to explain it. It's like this is a vacuum, a black hole of my time. I'm I
Dude,
I'm
yeah,
just
give up.
unless
We
someone
get
asks me
it.
directly, I'm not going to even dive into it. But it's
No,
very cool that you came to that same conclusion.
it's a wash.
Yep.
All righty, another exciting episode. So fun. Oh man. Brandon, thanks for coming on today. Reed, thanks for coming on as well. We'll just do the outro here. Brought to you by Cochran Capital, thoughtfully designed investment portfolios for accelerated wealth building, sophisticated strategies to defer or eliminate capital gains, depreciation, recapture, and ordinary income taxes. Build the future you deserve. Thanks for tuning into the Dr. Josh Cochran Show. Wealth, health, family, freedom. This year, commit to building the future you deserve. Just a heads up, everything we talk about on this podcast, Reed, Brandon, and myself, are just our personal opinions and experiences. We're not giving legal, financial, tax, or accounting advice as much as we talk about these subjects. So don't take it that way. Be sure to talk to a qualified pro before making any big decisions. We're just here to share ideas, have real conversations, and hopefully help you think a little differently.
Great.